everybody. Hi there. Welcome to our first segment of Meet Our Experts. My name is Victoria Neville, and I'm going to be talking to you today about some of the projects that I work on at WWF-Canada. And because some of you asked when you heard the Wildlife Wednesdays segment that I did a few weeks ago about how I ended up here, I'll be talking as well about how I ended up working in conservation and having an enviable and cool, awesome job working for WWF Canada. So I'm just going to hold on for a couple minutes. We don't know how many people are going to join today because this is brand new, but I've been told to, wait for a few of us to join. This is a really casual session, so it's hopefully going to be 15 minutes max. I'll try not to ramble, but it's interactive. So if you guys have questions, either now or throughout the live session, just post them up and I'll do my best to address them. They're delayed, I think, a couple of minutes. So just be patient. And if I see them, I will absolutely try and address it. Oh my gosh, there's so many hearts. That's so sweet. Hi, Jelly. Hi, Anna. This is awesome. Cool. I'm glad you want to be involved with WWF. Awesome. Okay, folks, so I'm seeing everybody say hi, and I've given it a minute, so folks may join or they may see it a little bit later on. So I'll start off with my job. So I'm a senior specialist for marine fisheries and ecosystems, and I'm based in St. John's, Newfoundland. I'm actually from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, which isn't very far from here. And I have a lot of projects that are in my sort of day-to-day life, but for brevity and because we only have a few minutes today, I'm really just going to be talking to you about one of them. Again, tune into Wildlife Wednesdays back on the Facebook Live if you want to learn more about beavers, but today I'm going to be talking to you about my projects on capelin. So if you know me, you know that I spend a lot of my time talking about and thinking about capelin. Capelin are a really tiny fish. They're about this big, and although they're really small, they are of huge importance to the Northwest Atlantic ecosystem, particularly here in the Newfoundland and Labrador sort of shelf area in our ocean. And so basically, capelin are these small little fish, but they're of huge importance because they eat plankton. And so what they do is they feed on plankton like copepods, and plankton are they feed on algae, which are really rich in omega-3 fatty acids. So basically why capelin are so important is because when they feed on those plankton, they make available to the upper levels of the food chain bite-sized bits of food for things like seabirds, like whales, like Atlantic salmon, like Atlantic cod. And so basically the capelin have this ability, they have these rakers that they're able to eat the super tiny food and make it available to them. So, all right, so they're really, really important. And if those forage fish aren't available in that ecosystem, it can have all kinds of disastrous effects. So they're basically that link. And that link exists in all of the oceans. Forage fish are important everywhere. So sometimes it's smelt or anchovies, but in our system, it's mostly capelin. And so when fish have low levels of forage fish in the area, it can have kind of disastrous effects. So just imagine that the capelin has within it all of the nutrients that those fish need to grow and to reproduce and to build healthy populations. So when that food isn't available for them, they'll result to eating other types of food. So it may be things like shrimp or crab that are mostly shell, or could be the garbage that's in the ocean, or they could be eating their own young. So that's a really big concern, and why we have to be concerned about capelin conservation in general. So here in Newfoundland and Labrador, a big part of what I do is advocate for those species. So I get out there and I write letters for capelin. I get media requests and I talk and I increase that literacy here in Newfoundland about why that species is important, why it needs to be protected. I take part in important decision-making forums, and I sort of bring that voice of those fish to the table because they need someone to advocate for them and for the conservation of the species. And so that's on the advocacy side of how we ensure that capelin are managed sustainably and their habitat is protected. But we also have a really cool tool that I'm sort of the steward of, and that is eCapelin. Maybe you've heard of eCapelin.ca. It's a tool not just for Newfoundland and Labrador, it's for all of the Atlantic provinces and Quebec. And basically how it works is capelin roll when they spawn. They basically come into the intertidal zone or the beach, and they lay their eggs right on the beach. And that's a great place for them because it keeps that away from predators, and it's warm enough for their larvae to develop really quickly. So they really need those beach habitats. And so this is a really cool phenomenon. Tourists come to Newfoundland and other places to see the capelin roll. And it's important to note, guys, that it's absolutely fine to go onto the beach and see capelin roll, and it's okay to collect capelin on the beach if you want to eat them or if you need them for food or for your garden or things like that. That's totally fine. We have no conservation concern about that. But if you do so, just make sure that you only take as much as you need and that you don't take buckets and buckets home that might go bad in the freezer or something like that. So just to note, our tool, eCapelin.ca, is a citizen science tool. So basically what it is that scientists are based in certain locations. Maybe it's a city, maybe it's a research hub, maybe it's at Fisheries and Oceans Canada. They can't be covering the coastline in all places at all times, so they rely on locals and tourists and others who are on the beach to tell us where the capelin are spawning. By doing that, both us at WWF-Canada and all of our research partners and others who study and want to protect capelin, they will know when the capelin are there, and they'll be able to go and take those samples. So that's important because for me, I've got a good idea. The capelin sort of start on the west coast of Newfoundland and they wrap their way around. So when I start seeing people post in that onset, I've got a good idea of how many days I have before I need to get out to the beach and collect samples, or when we can schedule our public education event at Middle Cove Beach where we're talking to folks about it. It's really important in that regard. But it also helps us to determine if the timing of capelin spawning is changing. So if the ecosystem's changing, if ice retreat is later or earlier, it's going to impact when that time happens. And if capelin abundance is lower, we may see them spawning in less places or for a shorter duration of time. And so while people have noticed this for a long time through local knowledge, this eCapelin website really just is a place where we can all put that together and we can track it over time. And it's just a place to consolidate all that information. So we put local knowledge there. Oh, okay, I've seen a few questions. What do I like most about my work? Anna, thanks so much. I think I've already kind of hit on it. When I can get out into the field is what I really like about my work, and talking to local people. So here's an example of what I like about my work. One site was posted on eCapelin in 2018 and 2019. We launched the tool in 2017. It took about a year for people to get used to it. So I saw this site 2 years in a row, and I needed to go out and take a core sample of the beach to look at the egg concentration there. So I drove out with my research partners to visit this beach and to collect samples, and there was a number of sites around there that capelin had been spotted. But when I got there, I couldn't believe it. It was, a kilometer long of beach. It was the absolute perfect substrate. If I dug my hands into it several feet. It was full of eggs, and that distribution was across the beach. It was so exciting. And the person who posted on eCapeland, they came out to the beach to say hi, and they brought their daughter, and they talked to me about, hey, this has been a really important beach to us, as long as we know. My grandfather used to come here. And so I was able to, first of all, know that was a Capeland spawning site because someone posted. And second of all, know that it's always been important. And they also let me know that there was some coastal development that may be happening there, and asked me to write some letters with them to protect that beach. So because of citizen science, I'm able to communicate with Fisheries and Oceans Canada to let them know that that's, a candidate spot that's really important for fish and fish habitat. And also, I learned so much from local people about sort of the ecology of the area. So that's what I really like. Somebody else asked about how can I become a citizen scientist. So that's great because ecapeland.ca is one citizen science tool. I think you have to have an interest to be a citizen scientist. So for me, one thing I really like is flowers and plants. So a good idea is to get out and start taking pictures of the things that you like, and take notes when you saw that flower or whatever that ecological thing is. Take notes when, where, time of day, time of year. And because your phone can we tend to stop using them, or maybe they get full and you delete things off. It's a good idea to pick up a field notebook. I recommend these ones. They're Write and Rain. And that's because they are water resistant. So as long as you use pencil, this thing, you can keep it for 10 years. This one's a bit of a messy one that I have, but I've got, some of my notes from the last time I went out to a Capeland beach in there. So it's a good idea to write that down, and pick up some local field guides so that you can, compare what you've seen. And the really important part about being a citizen scientist is not keeping that information to yourself, contributing it out to the world. So share your observations. Find that database. Is it ecapeland.ca? Is it a Capeland observation? Maybe. If it's a bird observation, there's lots of bird forums. You can join groups on social media, blogs, all kinds of things like that. So there's never been an easier time to be a citizen scientist. You're not just a natural historian in your house. You're sharing it with the world. So to learn more, we have a blog on being a citizen scientist on WWF. And someone asked if you can do this in the city. Of course you can be a citizen scientist in the city. There's wildlife there. But one of the ways you can do it is by growing native plants, right? So we have a In the Zone webinar as well on our website, and that'll teach you about how to grow native plants that can attract local wildlife to your urban environment. Okay. I see highs, but I think those are all the questions I've seen so far. Sorry if I missed it. We're pretty much coming up to the end. So there's a couple of questions that were sent to WWF-Canada before. Folks were asking how I got started in the field and what advice I have for folks who want to get involved in conservation and get into the field. Really, how I started is probably the same as everyone else. I have a connection to nature. We all have that connection to nature. I grew up in Cape Breton. We had a cabin on the beach, and I would walk there with my father, and I would see gaspareaux, which are fish, coming in, and I had that that feeling of joy and peace and inspiration that comes from seeing wildlife. I would talk to my grandfather about the eagles that nested nearby. Do they do this every year? How long had that happened? And that sort of stoked that personal connection to me. I went to school. I studied biology. That's the path that I took. And I kind of found it a little bit boring until I got to the stage in my career where I could get back out there through field work, because I really need that experience of being out there in nature. And once I get that, then I can go and read my books and, want to know everything about it. So whatever path you choose, whether it's you want to be an environmental lawyer, or you want to work for a conservation organization, or you want to be a biologist, just keep leaning into those opportunities. Find people that you look up to, that are in the field, spend time with them, go to seminars, just keep leaning in, and don't be discouraged when not everything works out. I certainly had some adversity on the way to having such a cool job. And what advice I have, I guess, in addition to that, as excited as you can get about the science that you learn, don't use Latin names all the time. That's something that I was really proud of when I started studying ecology. Was I would refer to eelgrass as Zostra, or I would refer to cod as Gaddis morhua. But you need to realize that people have all kinds of different names for things, and there's no real right way to name things. So as you learn all of the sort of Western scientific knowledge, keep your mind open to the different types of knowledge that people have, and keep your ears open to what your grandfather or community members know. So that's really all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in for 15 minutes and learning about my work and my path to joining WWF-Canada. So to learn more, please check out our website, wwf.ca. And don't forget to come back next week for another episode with my amazing colleague, Ryan. One last question. Biggest tip for getting into the field of conservation? Tenacity. I took a biology degree, and the first few supervisors that I reached out to they had labs that were full and they weren't taking on students. I read authors' books, I wrote them, so I just kept trying until I found the path that worked. So you will. Don't worry, just keep working.